When my family moved from Woodmar to Hessville in March of 1962, this location became all important to us. We lived south of Hessville Park on California Avenue, but my brother and my best friend Charlie Harvey and I, it seemed like at least once a week, we made a journey down Kennedy Avenue all the way down. It was like journeying to Mecca every week. This store was called Pint Size, and it was really one of the great mom and pop stores of the late 50s and 60s. It was owned by a married couple named Bill and Trudy Gasper, and they were bicycle enthusiasts. And the store was basically divided into two halves, right down the middle. That half was always dark, it seemed, and there were tons of bikes just lined up on the store. And then there were big shelves up on that side, on that wall. And there were strollers and big dolls and things like that. The counter of the store was directly in through this door at the back, and it was surrounded by shelves with games and stuff. And Mr. Gasper was always in the back over here working on bikes, and he'd come out with his hands full of grease and stuff, which he called goober. And in this part of the store, there was a big window, not this three-window thing, same thing over here, a big display window with a shelf ledge behind it. And there were shelves built into the walls, and this is where the models were. And these guys had, I think, more model kits than anybody. Anything that you wanted at the time, you could find here. What was really cool is 2 months after we moved here, now in May of '62, the first Aurora model, the Frankenstein model, was here, and I got it for my birthday. And thus began this long odyssey, it seemed, that went through a couple of years with the release of the Aurora models, every one of which we would wait patiently for and come and buy here. Now, they got their shipments on Friday afternoons, and so very often when we knew Aurora Monster model was about to be released, we would come down here every Friday and bug them, and they were very patient with us. They'd say, no, it's not in yet, just come back next week. Well, the Wolfman and the Dracula were released that Christmas '62. I got a home movie somewhere, my brother opening up the Dracula model. The Creature from the Black Lagoon, spring of '63, and I remember the Mummy model. It came out here into this store on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, late May '63, and I remember riding down here on my big old bike with the balloon tires with the Mummy model, driving back home amidst the cottonwood trees. They were snowing all over. It was fabulous. In November of '63, waiting for the Phantom of the Opera model to be released. And I remember it came out on a Friday, the last Friday in November of '63. That would have to be November 29th. And we remember that, of course, because 1 week earlier, on the 22nd, President Kennedy was assassinated. A very, very dark time, and it was somewhat mirrored by the darkness and creepiness of that Phantom of the Opera model and the very impressive cover artwork on the box. And oh my goodness, look at here. Here he is. This is, in fact, my original model, Phantom of the Opera, which I bought here at Pint Size Stores on November 29th, '63. And where it's sitting, right on the other side of this wall, big window here. In those days when Aurora models sent their shipment of new models to a store, they would also include a factory-made display model, all beautifully airbrushed and assembled and whatnot, and it sat right on the other side of this window back then in those good old days, 1963. Pint Size was really a fabulous, fabulous, one-of-a-kind place, and it was established and maintained for years by the Gaspers, and wherever they are, Bill and Trudy Gasper, thanks very much for many, many wonderful hours spent here in these hallowed walls. Here on Kennedy Avenue, just south of 169th Street, was a favorite store of ours. It was called Sharon May's, privately owned and operated by a couple, a middle-aged couple. And the woman, I never knew her name. She was like everybody's favorite aunt, very soft-spoken. The counter was right inside this window. She stood at the counter with her back to the window, and she was always behind the counter. And the gentleman who was her associate here, his name was Mr. Jusak, older guy, kind of dark complexion, reminded me of the actor Glenn Strange, who played Sam the bartender on Gunsmoke. He always stood in the corner there kind of watching us to make sure we weren't ripping stuff off. Well, there was a little freezer unit right in front of the counter for ice cream. There was a carousel for comic books and whatnot, and shelving units going this way, dark in the back of the store. We rarely ever walked back there to see what was there. I just suspect there was a lot of knickknacks and wall hangings, wall plaques, and cheap stuff like that, just in boxes with tissue paper and stuff, like they had bought out a warehouse and just jammed the stuff on the shelves. I remember finding some really cool rubber Halloween masks in 1962 Halloween there. But we basically would just stop in here for candy and stuff. At the counter at Halloween, you could always get the wax teeth and the whistles and all that jazz, and the candy, the strips of paper with the candy on it and whatnot. Or we'd stop for a comic book. But one thing that was really very interesting about it was here, right on this wall, they had the old pegboard walls and magazine racks. Well, this was in the days when the Enquirer was, we all know it, of course, as a scandal sheet, but back then in the mid-'60s, it was a different kind of scandal sheet. And it was here on the walls with newspapers. It was a black and white paper at that time, and it was very much like a police crime periodical. And you know, you'd walk by it and you just, sometimes my brother or a friend would buy it for a quarter, and you just kind of tested your bravery if you wanted to look and see what was in this, because it had all kind of crime photos from crime scenes with bodies and stuff, and accident scenes with all these heavily retouched police photos and stuff. It was really kind of grotesque. It was the only thing that kind of brought the experience down a bit, walking into Sharon Mays here. But it was a fabulous place, and it was here for many, many years and gave us lots and lots of hours of enjoyment. Sharon Mays.